In Ableton Live 11.3, there's a new synthesizer called Drift. And Drift is meant to be extremely expressive and to capture the inconsistencies and warmth of real analog hardware synthesizers. And if you've paid any attention to the sound design work I've done in my hundreds of Ableton Live packs over the last few years, then you can probably guess that I love Drift. I've been designing my own presets for Drift for the last couple weeks, and it's incredible. Right now you're hearing me improvise on some of those presets I made with Drift. I've got a free pack of 10 presets that you can have for your music over at brianfunk.com/drift. It even includes a 16-pad drum rack where each drum sound is made up of a Drift preset. But I actually made 50 different presets. And all 50 of those presets are only available to members of my music production club, because you guys are my biggest supporters. Members of the Music Production Club always get my newest creation as soon as it's released. My educational materials, including video courses, my books, helpful PDFs, and they're part of a really cool, supportive community of fellow music makers. And I love that community. We have a Discord server where I get to hear people's music. We get together and hang out for live Zoom meetings, share our music, share tips, do projects together. It's so much fun and really exciting and inspiring for me to share this community with everybody. And there's also bonus materials for the Music Production Club, which are basically just free stuff from my store that I put on there every once in a while. So if you want to get all 50 of these Drift presets, sign up for the Music Production Club at brianfunk.com/MPC. I'm really proud of these presets. They're so expressive and deep, and some of them have maybe a reverb or a delay on them, or maybe an arpeggiator, but almost all of them are just Drift itself without any effects. It's amazing what you can do with this synthesizer, and I had a lot of fun making these sounds. And I think they're going to work really nicely in all kinds of different music genres. So if you want to get your hands on 10 free Drift presets, go to brianfunk.com/drift. If you want all 50, join the club. brianfunk.com/MPC. Thanks a lot, and enjoy this episode of the Music Production Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I have Ameya. He's a prog rock musician. He's also a biomedical engineer. He's releasing a new EP this spring, and he's got a YouTube channel where he's starting to give people tips on songwriting and his journey as a musician. And I'm really excited for him because he's got this EP coming out, and that's a major accomplishment for anybody to finish work and put it out there, especially. So it's good to have him here. Ameya, welcome to the show, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Brian. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And congratulations on this EP that's coming up. Does it have a title yet?
It does. It is called Turill, T-U-R-I-L-L, Turill. That's what the EP is going to be called. I made a promise to one of my best friends that I will name the EP that. It was the name of his apartment that he used to stay in, and I was crashing at his place for a bit. So that's my first EP, and it's going to be called Turill, and I'm very excited. It's going to have 3 songs. Most of them I have been writing for quite some time now, and it's essentially like a collection of all of the songs that I have been working on, and just some really, really interesting collaborators that have also worked with me on this EP. So, yeah.
Very good. Yeah, that's really cool. And I like the connection to, it's got a kind of interesting sound, Turill, and it's a place that's meaningful to you as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice. So when did you start working on it? You said you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. So I came here in the United States in 2017. That was for my master's degree, and the first thing I did was, like, as somebody is also going to school, I got a guitar and just started like writing stuff. It's something, due to some airline regulations, I couldn't get my guitar from back home, but like within the first month, I already had a guitar. So I was always just writing music, and it's just a collection of like my best ideas since then. So the EP pretty much has been writing itself since 2017, and the 3 songs are essentially just a collection of my best work, and I've identified like, okay, these ideas are good enough to be converted and fleshed out into like complete songs. And so a few of them, like two of the songs, have been writing for a while, and the third song, which is the last song of the EP, is called Caramel Sunset. That it essentially was like one of the most latest song that I wrote, and wrote itself in like a year, about a year, and it has a very nice, very interesting collaboration with another Indian artist, and he's going to play a saxophone solo on that. So
Oh,
very
very
exciting.
nice. Yeah. So India's where you came from in 2017.
Yes. So
Nice.
I grew up in India, in Pune. There's the city very close to Mumbai, if you're familiar with that. Uh, I did all my college education there, high school, undergrad, and I moved here to pursue my master's in biomedical engineering. But I've always just played music and been super into guitar since I was 14.
Right. So does that mean also family's still back at home?
Yeah, so my
Yeah.
parents stay at home. They're back home in India, but my younger brother is here. He also studies in Philadelphia, and we're very close. So we do hang out
Yeah.
occasionally. But yes, that my family's back home.
Nice. Yeah, background on me, I teach English in high school and I have classes for students that are learning English. So I get a lot of students from all over the world and
Oh,
the stories they have to get to the United States and whether it's for education or family or whatever it might be. It's always growing up's hard enough, right? And
yeah,
like a transition to college is hard enough. To do that in a whole other place presents so many other challenges. So it's nice, of course, you have your brother there. I'm
yeah,
sure that's really helpful. But I think probably also like having something like music to turn to is a really useful thing, as it was for me and probably anyone listening to this podcast, just to deal with
absolutely.
life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has been an inseparable part of my life. Like all sorts of emotions that I feel or any part that I'm going through, I think it has just served as this really, really good outlet for me. Invariably so, like a lot of my feelings do express themselves through the work that I do, and uh, keeping it instrumental was really important for me. I'm partly because I'm really not good at writing lyrics. Like it's just not my cup of tea. So, uh, and also the bands that I listen to are very, very focused on being instrumental. So I do like the arrangement aspect of things and the freedom that it gives me to really experiment with whichever instrument that I want. And guitar being the main driving force behind that was really, really fascinating to me. So that would be like guitar would be my main instrument, but I've also learned drums for like 6 years.
Hmm,
So that really,
nice.
really ties it all together. So I took drum lessons, but I was learning guitar on my own, and that just made me like very well equipped to like write my own music in a DAW. So
Right. Yeah, I started on guitar too, and learning
mhm.
drums was something I tried to make a point of, especially
Yeah,
before I was recording on a computer when I could quantize and program things. But, in order to get my songs going, the most important thing was you needed something steady to follow along with to play all your, an
exactly.
overdub on. So I
Yeah,
tried very hard. I was lucky enough that usually there was a drummer that had left drums at my house. So I
okay.
practiced on them a lot, enough to where I could at least play them enough to hold down beats. But it makes it a lot easier as a songwriter to give
For
yourself
sure.
that backbone.
Yeah, I would agree. Learning drums has been very helpful to me in one particular way where when in terms of programming we really sort of lose focus of the fact that a drummer has only four limbs, so
Right.
we can so programming drums just becomes that much more robotic if you got into it straight away. But having learned those articulations on the drums, and not that I wanted to pursue drums in a professional way anyway, but it's just learning the limitations of like having four limbs has just made me program the drums in that much more realistic fashion. And I think like I I don't want to chase that perfect song with that perfect drum beat. So I just like to keep those like inconsistencies in terms of like the drum velocities, and the human aspect of things is what makes the song just flow better. Because I know I write in a strictly studio only setting, and I am yet to take any of my songs live. But eventually, when I do plan on doing that, I want them to just have that element of like being able to replicate that in a live setting. So that has always been the focus of like me writing drums and then programming, or then going into like making some guitar parts around it. But learning drums has really helped me like just making sure that I'm staying within the boundaries of like a human drummer. So if I was to give this part to somebody, he would be able to play it.
Right. Yeah. You can only really do four things at once, and more often it's three, because if you're writing anyway, that left foot is mostly just on the hi-hat, unless I guess you have double bass pedal, which you probably do in prog rock.
Yeah.
But
I do.
That perspective is important, because it just gives you an idea of like how to put things together too, when you're writing music, to know like this is the kind of thing a drummer can do, and this is how a drummer increases energy, this is how they slow it down, with not slow necessarily, but like lay it back a little bit and create those feels that you probably want to communicate in your music.
Absolutely. I think that dynamics is just something that is so driven from the drums, like the dynamical aspect of like where you want the song to go, or the next preceding chorus, or the next verse that is coming after like a really loud section, is just so dependent on the drummer. So just getting those things right is what is sort of slightly differentiating you from writing a good consistent song, and also trying to be like the artist that you follow. So that was just really, really important to me. And a lot of the artists that I follow also talk about this, because like the articulations and the drum velocities are so important. And one of the biggest inspiration was Misha Mansoor from Periphery. He is just a phenomenal guy, and he is. I follow him so much, to a point where he is just so open in terms of his process, that he's sharing everything that they do together as a band, and he has been for 15 plus years. So it's just very nice to take bits and pieces from there.
Yeah, and have that information passed down and shared and improved upon, and all that is useful.
Yeah.
A lot of my favorite
Absolutely.
drummers too are often guitar players or piano players, or at least dabble in it, or pay attention at least to what the other people are doing, just so, because then you understand like how to play to the song and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
And that's like something you're doing too, though. You're sharing what you're learning as you're going along. You're putting things out there. Maybe I'll ask you for one. When prog rock it's actually a pretty like wide-ranging genre.
Yeah.
How do you define it, and like what kind of angle do you like? What kind of influences do you have?
So prog rock is essentially, for me personally, it takes the form of mainly being instrumental, and I myself have just such a wide variety of influences that I would just categorize it in terms of prog rock. For me, the biggest influence is a guitarist called Pliny, and another band by a Canadian band called Intervals. They are just the main two bands or artists that I really listen to, follow, and consume the most. Those two, they have just been in this space for quite some time now, and just really the type of music. Pliny's music is very influenced by jazz, but in terms of getting elements from metal, with the double bass and the loud interlocking bass with the kick drum patterns and very drum oriented grooves. So those being my main two influences, but I really like to like dabble with bands like Snarky Puppy, which are strictly on the other end of jazz, and really taking things into a different level with that. So I would say my influence is coming from like metal and coming from jazz, and then just sort of getting mixed into my head and then expressing themselves through my own music is what I would term my music to be, and that is how I just categorize that as prog jazz or prog rock. It's just sort of flirting with the boundary of like moving away from traditional rock, where we are really trying to incorporate some odd time signatures and really not trying to make it too obvious. So
Right. Yeah, definitely the odd time signature is a staple in that
yeah,
world.
yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes when I hear it, I'm like counting, like, what how many, 17 beats to this, so many
Yeah.
like interesting things like that. One of the people that I know that is like one of the biggest prog metal fans is also an engineer. It's my brother-in-law. And I'm wondering if there's something going on there. If this is like a very engineer, almost like there is a lot of math to it. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes another like branch might be like math rock, right? Like,
Yeah.
is there something that you think engineer types are drawn to in the prog scene, in the prog music?
I think you covered it by saying math, because math is essentially like the crux of engineering. And I've just always been a fan of like trying to trying to consume that is less obvious. I mean, growing up, I was listening to bands like Carnival and uh, Tool and Dream Theater, who were like my biggest like influences. But I sort of found myself moving away from the loud aspect of metal, but really trying to keep consistent with the songs being not in 4x4. But that being said, I'm not trying to like play a song every time in like an odd time signature. But the key is to make it that much less obvious, but really just try to still express yourself in the way.
Right. Yeah, I've been to a number of Dream Theater shows. Jordan Rudess. I had Jordan Rudess on the podcast
Oh,
a few
that's
years
fantastic.
back.
So that gives me. I'll definitely listen to that episode again. So
And he's
yeah,
a fascinating guy because he's obviously at the top of the game as far as any musician in the world goes. He could find
absolutely.
himself in the conversation, but he's still so endlessly fascinated by it. And something I kind of asked him about, I was like, you seemingly like are at the top of everything. How do you stay so excited and interesting and interested in it? You'd almost think like after a while someone would be bored. Like where do you go
Yeah.
from there? But
Hmm.
it's the same thing that I think a lot of us deal with, that there's no end to this game. It's a bottomless hole, or that sounds negative, but it's just an endless journey where you can always grow and always expand. And I guess in order to get to like a level like that, you really have to be endlessly fascinated and just want to
I
keep
agree.
going.
I agree. I'm a big fan of taking on things with like really lengthy learning curves. That
Mm.
was why also my main intention of learning guitar in the first place. Like I'm actually a classically trained singer. Like I grew up learning Indian classical music, and that comes from being influenced by my mom, who's a classically trained dancer, and my dad, who is also a big proponent and consumer of Indian classical music that was just always playing in my household. And when my mom discovered that I could sing, she really just pushed me towards taking singing lessons, and I was really doing well and taking to it very well. I used to like sing in many competitions locally and compete with like friends in my school, or just take competitions to like on a higher level. I've even been on TV once to sing in like a singing talent show. But
Nice.
post that, I think I found myself like really taking picking towards the sound of the guitar. And I got my guitar and like my first guitar in eighth grade, and then I was just so fascinated by it that uh, my earlier intention was to master the instrument, and then it sort of became this whole obsession with developing a sonic like space, like a sound space that I
Mm.
would like to create of my own. So when I was 15 or 16, then we started like a post rock band, and that influenced me to a world of instrumental music. And then from post rock, I became like a prog rock musician. So that was still with a few other people in the band back then. And writing in a band setting is so different as writing in a as to writing in a solo as a solo artist. So uh, as soon as I found like a few things that sort of pointed me in a direction where like now I can write my own music. I've always had ideas, so the freedom that it gave me is really, as you said before, like it's such a big hole that you can keep digging and discovering so many new things. So I'm very very early in the process, and I absolutely enjoy it. Like that's one of the main things that I know I'm an engineer and I do have my day job and I do enjoy that as well, and that comes with its own set of responsibilities. But when the day ends and I'm coming back and I'm picking up my guitar, it doesn't matter if I'm writing a new piece of music every day or not, but just playing and learning more and more about the instrument itself is what is the driving force for me.
Yeah, that's another endless puzzle. Even Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, I saw an interview with him talking about how the guitar is a puzzle, and every
Yeah.
day there's a new piece he can find and there's new ways to arrange it. And it's cool to hear someone like that too, who's later into life, been playing since he was a kid, to still say like it's still a mystery. It's still
Yeah.
so much more to unlock.
It's just, yeah. I mean, funnily enough, if somebody asks me if they should pick up guitar, I would say no.
No.
It's just, it's because it's just, you need to be patient, you know.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's frustrating. It's just a part of it, you know. It's so frustrating. Not everything is going to go your way, and to really see progress, you must put in so much more effort than you initially thought. Uh, I was never a fan of learning songs because for me that was just the easy way out of getting a sound out of the guitar. But uh, if I did like a song, I would essentially end up looking at the theoretical aspect of it and trying to understand the mechanics of it. And that sent me down a different rabbit hole of like music theory, and it is complicated. It is very hard to get, and it is again a very drawn out learning curve. So being patient would be would be the main thing that you have to do, especially with picking up guitar. And then writing music for me, I think of like when I write an EP or when I write a song, this is just a byproduct of my exploration with like guitar. So I would, it was my main commitment is to get better at guitar. So
Right. That's funny. Don't do it. Don't do it,
yeah,
folks. Well, when I look at my life and I look back, starting guitar is definitely one of the biggest forks in the road that I ever
yeah,
took. I mean, I can even figure out that if I didn't start playing guitar, I would have never met my wife, because I met her through my drummer friend his girlfriend was friends with my wife, and I would have never met him if I wasn't playing music. And it's just funny when you think about, I was about that same age too. I was in ninth grade when I started, just before ninth grade. And I had no idea how much that was going to change the entire trajectory of my life. Just that one little decision. And you're right, I didn't know how hard it was going to be either. I knew it was hard, but the first time I was able to shown anything, I was able to sort of make it sound like the song. So that got me excited. But it was a valuable teacher. And I think one of the first things in my life that I really, really learned and internalized, like, hey, if I keep at this, I will get better. And it's so important, I think, at a young age to get something like that happening. So you learn the value of hard work, and you learn the value of struggling until you get it. And then to look back, 6 months earlier, something that was nearly impossible is a breeze. And it kind of blows your mind a little bit, and it really gives you a sense of power and capability.
absolutely. And funnily enough, I would say I met my wife because of guitar as well. I'm
Yeah.
actually getting married in 2 weeks, but that's what's happening currently in
Congratulations.
my.
I
Thank
saw
you,
that on
thank
your
you.
Instagram. I have a note to congratulate you on that
Yeah,
in my
and
notebook here.
just yeah,
It's
that's
great.
thank you. It means a lot. But that's how I met my wife too. Like uh, I actually put up a Instagram post of me playing a small bit from my first song that I released, Mango Hibiscus, and she responded to that, and she told me to honestly that I was too scared to comment because it sounded very very good. And then she like DM'd me saying, hey, this is really cool. And that's how we got to talking. And then we met. And now that was 3 years ago. And then now we're getting married. So
Wow.
I proposed to her in in the park that we met for the first time, and that was directly as a result of us talking because I was playing guitar. So
Wow.
it's very similar to your story. Yeah,
Well, congratulations. That's a very modern love story, right? DMs
yeah,
on
yeah,
Instagram. That's cool.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, and probably my 14-year-old self was maybe not secretly, at least maybe secretly to the rest of the world, but I was hoping like maybe it would get me attention from girls in the first place, and maybe lo and behold, it worked, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I would say like there's definitely something. At that age, it. I didn't know that I was so. I didn't know that music was such a big like calling.
Mm,
And I had to pay attention to that. I just could not ignore it. But I would have to thank my parents for introducing me to to this space that they were always of the opinion that you can keep studying, but you also need to have a hobby that you can take very seriously. But
mm,
the way I looked at music was it was never like an option or never an hobby. It was just something that I was so passionate about that I have to give it time. And
mm.
it never came from a place of compulsion or forcefulness. It always came from a place where I wanted to do it. And it has taken me on whatever journey that it has. And I'm grateful for them for giving me that opportunity, and now I'm taking and running with it. So
Yeah, and that age is a very tender age. You're still becoming a person and developing and going through changes, and I'm very thankful like that I had that, because that was definitely a time when I look back on my life, I was trying new things. I was trying personalities on. I was trying on literally different clothing styles to see what kind of kid am I? Am I like this kind of kid? Am I that kind of kid? And it really wasn't until I started playing music that I was like, yeah, this doesn't feel like an outfit anymore. And as much as I talk on the show about feeling like an imposter, imposter syndrome
it's
and those
yeah.
self-doubt things, it just feels normal. And there have been times in my life where I've thought to myself like, hey, maybe it's time to grow up. You're in your late 20s and you're still playing these shows to almost no one, and you're still like making these dumb little songs. But in the depths of those despairs, it's always the music I turn to pull myself out. And
Yeah,
it was around probably that age where I started to really see the importance of it. Um, I got to tell
I
you,
agree.
as a teacher, and I'm with a lot of young kids now, I think a lot about the question of if I would still have played guitar if I had access to like a phone and the internet like people do now.
Hmm.
Because for me, I'm going into the 90s. So there
Yeah,
was
yeah.
there was really no internet to speak of. And I think I see a lot of young people that are like kind of missing this moment in their life where they can really find something they love, because they're just kind of distracting themselves when they're bored.
I would say I wouldn't have been that amount of time that I had without having the phone to distract me was like is something that I crave now. Because like if when I'm back in high school, like I come back from school and all I had was either I could go downstairs and play soccer, or like I can come back or just spend hours with my guitar until I have to do homework and go to bed. There was really no other way to spend time. I mean, maybe an occasional game on the gaming console, but that was not until my younger brother was born and I had somebody to play with. But till then,
Right.
like I had so much time like to spend hours on an acoustic guitar that had like the highest action I've ever played on, but it would make my fingers hurt. But it was just so it was so rewarding in terms of I want to learn, and I'd agree that you may miss out on it, but I would say I also think that they're just not introduced like the kids are not introduced to it the correct way. Like if they have somebody in their family, like their father or somebody who is just equally into guitar and he's always doing something and it just falls on their ear, I think they'll naturally sort of pick up. But it's definitely a lesser chance of them doing so since they're so involved in their phones and with noise cancellation on AirPods, you can barely hear anything else that's in the other room. Uh, but I would say it has a lot to do with the environment. Like my parents made sure that there was good quality music, which was their choice to be played around me, and I naturally got attuned to it and wanted to take it further. So,
Right. Well, it sounds like your parents themselves really appreciated that, the arts. You said your mother is a professional dancer, I think, right?
yes, so
And
she's an Indian classical dancer. There's a dance form called Bharatnatyam, and she has dedicated her life to it. Like through schooling, she has done 16 continuous years of dance, and then she took a break to raise me and my brother, and then she immediately dove headfirst into it as soon as I was done with college. And now she has over 150 students that she teaches, and she still performs with her own troupe all over India. So,
wow, that's great
yeah.
to have a
Mhm.
passion like that. And, I'm sure it keeps her healthy and fit and
Absolutely.
the mind sharp. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. I'm
That amongst
surprised. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, like it's just I was just saying like that amongst like that's where my commitment towards music also comes from. There's so much inspiration behind like how my mother is able to take care of everything in her life and not let go of her worldly responsibilities, but also just commit to something that she's so passionate about that well, she's held other jobs and day jobs in her life before, but now she has fully managed to turn her passion into like uh, a means of earning, but it's not an effort for her. It's just something that she's so good at and she loves doing. So
Hmm. And that's a great influence on you
mhm.
and your brother. And if you have any other siblings, that to have an
Yeah,
example of somebody like that still pursues things. And,
absolutely.
there's a lot of, I guess, feeling like when you grow up, you're kind of like, that's who I am. And it's kind of unusual that people take on new things. I think like by the time you hit maybe 30, you kind of just decide like this is the end of me. Not in that like this is as far as I go and these are the things I do. For so many people, they would say like they're too old to start something new, or but it's so not true. Um,
Exactly. I agree. I mean I started learning French a year ago and
oh, nice.
it again brings us back to like me picking up activities with like really long learning curves. Like
Yeah.
I love reading. I love reading books a lot, amongst also, playing music and working. So I really wanted to learn another language, which was just so different from what we learn in India, and also English, which is of course everybody's first language now almost. So so yeah, I guess you are right. There's no limit to when you can like pick up guitar or any other, especially in terms of music, as you and I both can approve that. I've had people reach out to me who are like almost 30, 35 now, and they want to start learning. And I'm like, sure, like, if you do it the right way, and I can really help you avoid all the mistakes that I did.
Yeah.
So you're going to be in a better spot in like 5 years uh, than me, who was like trying to do something without access to internet, with just an acoustic guitar. So uh,
Hmm.
I would definitely think, and I would recommend that to people because, like if you really take to it, you would find something so beautiful that you never existed in your life. So it just makes everything like worth it. So.
Right. Yeah, that's a valuable perspective to learn from somebody who had to teach themselves and to
Mhm.
understand the common pitfalls that people run into. Um, Maybe if you're more formally educated, you wouldn't run into those things, so you don't know they exist. And it would be maybe a hard thing to identify in your students. But to kind of know, like, hey, this is going to probably happen to you.
Yeah.
A friend of my parents, they were my sister's friend's parents too. Um, he's a really nice guitar player. He let me borrow his guitar amp when I first started. And I don't think it was anything too special, so he probably didn't mind it being gone. But the fact that he let me borrow an amp helped me out a lot. And I remember him saying to me, when you're first learning, you're going to learn a lot of stuff, but there's this point where you sort of plateau.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's, I guess, anything, right? Like, as you learn, everything's new, so you're learning all kinds of stuff. But then this, like, plateau that comes in with guitar and music, um, the fact that he just said that to me, like, prepared me for it. So when I kind of got to that point where I was like, yeah, I've kind of can play the songs I like, but I'm not really moving forward. And that's happened multiple times as well in my life, not just when I was learning, because I'm still learning, I guess, but there's multiple plateaus, and you have to kind of be aware that that stuff's going to happen. It
I
was just
agree.
great advice. Like, it was such a small comment too. It was a 10-second conversation probably, but it stuck
Yeah.
to me.
Some things really stay with you. That happened to me when I was learning drums. I had this really nice drums teacher who I still am very good close with, and he reviews all of my demos and gives me a lot of suggestions and tips. And uh, there's some things that he has said that really stuck with me. I mean, there's I was when I was learning drums, I was more into a phase of uh, I was really obsessed with heavy metal. Like I was really embodying the heavy metal persona. I had grown out my hair for like 6 years and wearing black t-shirts only, and really just learning all double bass grooves and not really focusing on timing and everything. And just so he asked me like this, he told me like that to focus, to be a good drummer is to just play simple things. Like you need to be able to simplify and be a part of the band, like serve the music or serve the song more so than put yourself, over people or out there. So uh, just having, of course, having a good teacher is something that is very important. And I think I've been fortunate enough to meet like a few people who've just had this deep impact on the way I approach music, and they've just really made sure that I'm aware that okay, like you have talent and you have all of these ideas, but you really need to sit down and put those ideas into practice and discipline yourself, because that's essentially what will make you uh, sustainable. Otherwise, it's just like a momentary momentary thing that you have with like your music. Like, okay, I'm good at it. I like playing guitar. I'll play a solo. But if you really want to develop it and make it a part of your own, it has to be a part of your everyday life. And you can't skip practice. You have to like at least do 15 minutes of guitar practice every day. I would ideally not skip that anytime. And that's over like a long enough time scale. I think that's what makes a difference. So,
Yeah, it's the consistency.
mhm.
When I first started guitar, I made it just a point to play the thing every day. I
Mhm.
didn't have a time limit. I tried to play it as much as I could, but I had to play it every day. If that meant like it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I just have to, I have to pick this thing up and play it a little bit, a couple minutes. It was such a smart decision. I didn't know that. I was just more that like I wanted so bad to be able to play guitar. It wasn't so much that I knew this was how you learn stuff, but it was really helpful to just make that a point that just show up every day. I mean, most times I'll be able to put in a decent amount of time, especially when I was younger and didn't have any responsibilities. But it's the days when you don't have the time. And when you
Very
show up
true.
then, that's really huge. And I had a martial arts instructor that said pretty much the same thing. It's like the days when you don't want to train. When you show up on those days, then you've really won the battle. And it makes a huge difference because then you teach yourself, I can do it. I was tired,
Very
I
true.
was hungry, I was whatever I was, and I still did it.
It's very true. I agree. This is very true. I think consistency over, you know, the volume of work even. Like since 2017, I've only written like 4 songs. I know, like on Instagram or something, I would portray myself as like, I'm a guitarist and I'm always like, writing something. But to take a song to completion is so much consistent, continuous effort, and not everything I write is always good. Not everything I write is a part of the song that serves the song or, makes it good. And it's also true on the other side where like I have to physically just say stop, okay, this is as good as a song it's going to get, and then release it and then move on to the next one. But the fact that it's so drawn out, and there's a few ideas that I keep going back to. That's what makes me think that okay, these are the songs that I really want to release. And in my current routine with my day job and everything, it's really tough to come back and sort of find that consistency with like, oh, what was I thinking when I played this first section for this song 2 days ago when I wrote this part? And to have those things connected and still keep the song going, I think that's where like playing every day or at least listening to the song every day, that's where it's going to really make a difference.
Well, then you're letting the good ideas kind of rise to the top. It sounds like you're coming up with music, but you're pursuing the best stuff you get, and I think
Yeah.
that's a decent way to approach it too. Let the ideas come, but not everything. I talk a lot about like finishing music and the importance of that, but
Yeah.
it's also okay to let things go.
Yeah.
I
I would say.
I guess it's a problem when it becomes guilty. You become guilty over it, all these unfinished things. But sometimes you need failed experiments and ideas that just are so-so in order to get to the stuff that's a little bit better.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly the process that I use for my writing. The way I approach my songwriting is it usually starts with me having me having an idea when I'm practicing, or I don't actually start like, okay, now I'm going to write a song. Like that almost just never happens. I just I'm trying to learn a solo. I'm trying to learn a theoretical aspect. I'm practicing my daily arpeggios, and then there's this 10 or 15 minute you know period where I just like try to let myself go. I pick out like a guitar patch or like a guitar preset that I've never used before, and I just try to ad lib or try to write something with that. And I store those ideas, and that's I make sure that I record everything. And and then I filter them out by I record everything and I export it out. And then next day when I'm traveling to work or I'm walking to the train station, I just make sure I listen to everything. And that's when I'm just filtering out the good stuff. And then I know exactly when I come back home, I know what I want to work on. And I would even go and say to a point that most of my music that I write just happens away from the guitar. I essentially come back to my computer and just download everything from my mind or from the ideas that I have isolated and made sure that okay, I need to capture this, and then I come and just play it. So that's the way
Right.
I approach my songwriting.
I do very much the same thing. I try to record everything,
Hmm.
especially with the band too that I play, and we record everything. And whether we're playing here or at my buddy Chris's, whoever recorded it will then during the week send it out to the band and listen to it, and like that work happens. Or if I'm working on an idea, it goes on. I listen to it on the car ride, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about like things I can improve upon, and I'm observing myself, which is hard to do while you're doing it.
Exactly.
So you get that like third person perspective on your own stuff. And I agree. I think a lot of growth happens there.
Hmm.
When I was younger, it was before one of our first shows as a band, and I was working at McDonald's, my first job. Good old McDonald's, which I would still say is the most efficient place I've ever worked as far as like an organization that is dialed in with a system. Little did I know it was all downhill from there. But it's not very, the work I was doing anyway, putting hamburgers on a grill was not very mentally challenging work. So even though you're moving and you're doing a lot, your mind was kind of free to go wherever it would. So we had a show coming up, and I actually played the show in my head, where I imagined every single song we were going to play and my parts, and I was playing guitar in my head. And I really think that helped. And it's something that I sometimes take with me now when I'm in these sort of like, it's usually physical activity or manual labor. If there are chores I have to do or something, where I do that sort of rehearsal in my head. Sometimes it's even for podcasts or like videos I make. I'm like classes I'm going to teach, from students, whether it's my schoolwork or like with music. I think it's really valuable to go through it in your head. And I've heard people say, scientists say that like when you watch someone do something or when you imagine doing it, the same parts of your brain light up under, whatever kind of imaging. Yeah, right. I wonder, maybe you know more about that as a biomedical engineer. But
it's the day job aspect of things that just so evident. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I pretty much practice my show like now that I've written like 5 songs that I really am very comfortable like taking live. I just take my guitar and it's not even plugged into anything. I just practice like how I would play them on stage because it's so different than me sitting here on my chair and playing those guitar parts, whereas me just playing them standing. It's just that much. There's just so many nuances to it. And I just run through the whole show in my head, and those are the times when I was able to like really come up with what would be like the order in which I would play these songs, which song should be the last one, how do I want to end the song. And although like I know these songs are written in a home studio, and I'm a big fan of like playing the song exactly as the studio versions, and I imagine myself like playing that to a click track with in-ear monitors and everybody. But I do run through like the whole show and 35 minutes of my whole set time, and just as you were doing when you were working the McDonald's job. So I take a lot of walks. I'm a big fan of just like putting those things in order. And even a simple thing as like what would be the order of songs for my EP was decided when I just exported all of these 3 songs and just went for a walk and decided which song sounds good after the other. And that's how I was really able to finalize that. And you feel different things when you're in different places, I think. So I definitely try to I would say like my home studio space is a very creative, very focused on like trying to capture all of my ideas, but to make sense of that and put that into context is something that I have to do in a different setting. So
I love that aspect of sequencing the songs and figuring out, and sometimes it's different in a live performance than an album.
Exactly.
But when you get the sense of like, yeah, this makes sense, this feels good, it starts to become more of a singular thing. Now it's just like an album, or it's a performance, and things fit together well. They flow together, and it makes everything a little bit better for it. Like the next song sounds better because of the song that came before it, and because of the one that comes after it.
I agree, absolutely. So it's also very important because people coming to consume your songs in a live show is very different to them listening to in their comforts of their home. So again, like as the environment changes, you do have to like cater to the crowd. And I think that's just one aspect of music. I love playing live. I genuinely love being on stage. Back home when I was touring with my band and taking our EP live, it's the moments that on stage that I don't remember them. Like I don't remember what happened in those 45 minutes of the set list that I was playing, but that's how focused I was on playing it correctly and just enjoying my time on stage. So I love being on stage. I love playing live, and that's something that I'm really, really looking forward to after the release of this EP. So
it's an exhilarating feeling, especially if you can forget about yourself and just kind
Absolutely.
of be in it in the moment.
Hmm.
And it does have a way of sort of zapping you there.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, I guess it can be pretty miserable too if you're just
Yeah.
terrified. But when it does happen, there's few things that supply that kind of rush in life.
I agree. It's it's more of not even the rush. Like believe me, I believe like I'm very nervous when I go on stage. Like, the nature of the music itself is like the guitar parts are fairly complicated and uh, I do really try working very hard on like staying true to the studio version that I have tracked, and that has been my entire like I would say my personal philosophy in terms of playing my songs, that I really want to replicate the studio version of that on stage, which requires a lot of focused practice on playing those parts together, because in a tracking setting we're all just taking so many takes, and maybe just the solo is what I'm tracking like in a single take, but the rhythms and any other layers that I'm tracking is all done in chunks of like how we're recording the songs. But to take that live and is going to be a whole different ball game. So it is very nervous, like it's very nerve wracking to like go on stage and try to be right. And if I make a mistake, I'm not going to like be so hard on myself. It's fine. It's just
Hmm.
one wrong note in so many other notes that I'm going to be playing. But uh, my focus is not to do that. And I'm really, really happy to be being able to play music on stage, and I just enjoy it. It takes me to a different like way of thinking. So
Well, that particular genre is definitely big on performance. There's
yeah,
a lot of virtuosity that goes into it, and people are often there for that. I mean, a lot of the music I've played is almost the opposite, like more sloppy punk rock, and it's like kind of part of it to be a little rough around the edges. So it's a different feeling, and I've had situations where I had to play a little more precisely, and it does feel there's a different type of nervousness. You're nervous, I think, either way. There's an energy, of course, that's building inside you when you get ready to play. But I mean, on another extreme, if seeing, say, like chamber music when I was in school,
okay,
in some of the music classes I did take, we would often have to go watch some of the students performing. They'd be doing recitals, or we'd go see the orchestra, and especially in the small performances, the recitals, there's like people with notebooks and they're like listening for everything. It's a tense feeling. It's like
I
you
can
walk into
imagine.
that room and you're like, oh boy, I better not even breathe too heavy
I can
because I'm going to
imagine.
ruin it. And they're amazing players, but it's a much different kind of feeling when your performance is being scrutinized. And I think maybe not to the same degree, but I think genres like a prog metal, prog rock, people are looking for that a little bit more than a lot of the stuff I've played in my life.
I agree. The audience has a lot to do with it. Like I mean, it gives me so much joy to have people like come and listen, that my nervousness is not comparable to what I'm going to get from the audience. So uh, a lot of like it's sort of the trend now. I wouldn't say trend, but like that's where the audience is sort of growing, where a lot of the shows that I go and watch for all of the bands that I love in this particular genre are people are just very, very calm, and they just want to like listen. The focus is more on listening, as opposed to a heavy metal show where there's like mosh pits and stuff, where I was a big fan of that. Like I used to be the skinniest guy in the middle of the mosh pit, like not worrying about a thing of like I don't care if my lip gets like cut. So but to come away from that and now just really focus on like what the artist has to offer, I think that's where I'm taking a lot of inspiration from these bands that I go watch, that they're really true to their instrumental or the tree instrument. They're really true to the versions of songs that they have tracked as albums, and they come and replicate the whole sound just as is. And uh, us as an audience, we're just there to really appreciate that, because as you said before, there's a lot of virtuosity in not just the guitar, but the bassist, the drummer, and everybody as a whole. So to get that whole sound and at like equal parts, all credit to the mix engineer. So you wouldn't do anything without him. So uh, I would say that that's just so nice, like so rewarding to have an audience who's just there to really appreciate in terms of listening, giving you that much time, and appreciating you for it. So it's a good, very
Yeah.
very good feeling.
Great point about the front of house people mixing the
Oh yeah,
music. Be nice to them. I've been in situations where people weren't so nice to the person doing sound. It's not good. They're on
I
your
don't.
side. You're collaborating with them, and they have a lot of control to change how you sound and how you come across to the audience. So, learn their names, be friendly to them, do whatever you can to make their job easier. It's a very important
Absolutely.
part of the show. It's their venue, really, and you're a
Absolutely.
guest.
This It's a no-brainer to just be friends with them. Like I'm always so my EP is being mixed and mastered by a sound engineer. His name is Stephen Ward. He's good. He has worked with me in the past. So uh it's just such a nice guy. Like I love being friends with him, and the more we opened up and the more we sort of got to know each other, that just he's managed to like really get the best out of my music, and that's what it does like every time. So uh, I've been in situations where we've had technical issues on the stage. It just happens so many
Yeah.
times. And uh, I would say I agree with you 100%. Just be nice to your mix engineers, and they are the ones who are solely responsible for delivering your music to your listeners. So you owe them at least that bit of niceness. So
Yeah, it's good advice in general, too.
yeah, just be a
It's
nice
nice to be
person, you know?
nice.
Yeah.
If everyone was a little bit nicer, how much nicer the world would be.
Mhm.
But it's so true. I mean, they're on your side.
Mhm.
So that's cool. It's cool you
Absolutely.
got that with him. You mentioned you were a classically trained singer, so I'm surprised that doesn't make its way into your music any. For myself, singing has always been a really challenging thing, and I always kind of like drumming in a way. We were talking earlier. Like always wish if I was a better singer, I could get my songs out there better. I could record them faster. I could do it all better. Um, do you have any interest in bringing that into your music, or I'm just surprised if that's if you're competitively singing as a kid, you must be good enough to really add something nice to your music. Is it just the genre thing, the style where you are right now?
I would say it's definitely a genre thing. I have tried adding vocals in the past, and there's so many other prog bands that do have like full-time vocalists, and it's just it's just something that I'm not like willing to do at the moment. It
Hmm.
may change. I'm slowly also getting back into singing. I do have I mean, off chance I play like a local gig or something, and I want to like sing a few songs, a few covers. I definitely sing, for my fiance from time to time, and all of these. I love Sting. I'm a big fan of Sting, and he is just the most wonderful singer ever, I think. So, but as a in terms of like getting singing into my own music, I would say I don't know if it's. I would be definitely open to working with another vocalist, but if it's me who's going to sing, I would say it's not a hat that I'm willing to put on just yet.
Right. Okay. Well, you got time to explore it.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to. I would say Prague Rock has just like it's my baby who I'm so into the technical aspect of like there's also like so much exploration to do in terms of like sound of Prague
Mm,
Rock. Like there's these plugins, there's so many different pedals and all the mixing, mastering, and my signal chain can variable. Like my guitars, like so many different guitars. So I would say like I don't have enough motivation to also modulate my singing because there's already so much to do in terms of progressive
sure.
rock music that goes into songwriting. So adding singing would just be another hat that I would have to wear, and I want to do it well if I do it. So
Right.
there may be a time that I would commit to it.
Yeah. Well, you are correct. I mean, it is opening a can of worms. Whether you have like the technical ability or not, there's,
Hmm.
how just like guitar, right? Like you
Exactly.
said, like what sound do we use? Like right there
Yeah.
is an answer of infinite possibilities. So,
Yep.
yeah, I can understand that. You've said a couple times you like things with big learning curves.
Hmm.
So, music, guitar, learning French, biomedical engineering. I mean, any one of these things is a lifetime pursuit. Is there something that draws you to it? Are there any, like, maybe like things about learning itself that you have come across and learned about that maybe like there's some connection in just learning things or that you've applied to the different. I mean, we talked a little bit about consistency,
Yeah.
but are there any kind of connective tissue that you've noticed along the way?
I would say I mainly discovered my love for learning new things when I came here for my master's degree in biomedical engineering. So for my undergrad, I have a mechanical engineering bachelor's, and I did not really like where that degree was like taking me in terms of like I'm not really a fan of cars or machines or all of those things, but I'm really into biology. It's just something that has fascinated me, and when I did come here for my master's, like the way the curriculum was designed to generate interest and then the learning just happens. Like I found
Mm.
myself like spending hours in the library just trying to learn more and more about biology and orthopedic implants and fractures and all of these things where nobody really had to tell me to go and do these things. I was just naturally doing them. And I found myself like being in the best spirits. I found myself being at my creative best. I had great periods of concentration, and the output of that was, really having like a good GPA in college. And it was mainly the feeling of like doing this effortlessly. There was less effort that I was There's less effort in me trying to push myself to do things and me just doing things because I just want to do it. So the feeling that I get by like playing guitar is I inherently just want to do it. And as many activities as I can find, as I want to do it, I just love spending time doing them. Uh, Part
Mm.
of the reason why I read a lot of books is also because I want to learn how to be, efficient with my time. I'm really into like trying to make the best use of my time because that's such a finite resource that we have. And uh, there's some complaint from me that I don't get to do music full time, but eventually that is the goal. But uh, trying to work with whatever time that I have is just some aspect of my personality that I really want to explore more. So that's the reason why I put all my time into all of this.
Mm. You said something that kind of stuck out to me that you develop interest, then the learning happens kind of on its own. And it's
Yeah,
so opposite from what happens at school.
exactly. Yeah.
That there's no real like developing the interest part first. And sadly, I hear a lot of students say I hate learning. I hate learning. I don't want to learn. We're going to learn something new. Oh, like what they're really saying is they don't like the way they're being taught or the way they're learning, the environment or whatever it is. But I think most people enjoy learning new things when they're interested in learning it.
Exactly. It's just I cannot describe the feeling of like when you get that something. Like, like it happened to me uh when I started connecting the dots of theory and trying to make sense of that with my music. Like essentially being a self-trained guitarist, I had no idea how the theoretical aspect of things played into your songwriting.
Hmm.
And it was very late into my guitar playing that I realized that it's going to add so much color to what you're doing, so much context. You're just going to understand how to move forward. Because I was facing, for example, I used to just write guitar parts on the basis of chord shapes, and I had no idea how they work together. But when I had memorized the fretboard and memorized the voicings and how they go in together and what are the scales and how they relate to like the key of your song, I eliminated a lot of roadblocks that I was hitting while songwriting. Like, okay, like I need to make a bridge and I need four new chords. Where are they going to come from? Well, the answer is like either you switch the key and go for those chords, or you come back in the same key and maybe try a few different chords. But my theory just like limited my choices, and then that made led me to actually make better choices and write better music. So
Right.
that's when it all connects together. That moment is just irreplaceable. Like I sort of live for those few moments that it all connects together when you're learning something new, uh, and that's what keeps me going and chasing. But chasing has like a wrong connotation to it. I'm not really chasing that. I keep hitting those moments in the process, and it just makes it all worth it.
Yeah, there's just so many to collect.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember that very well myself when I kind of was like, oh crap, like this song is has all the notes in the scale. That's why it is. Oh, the melody is from the scale. Like, you were learning scales, but you didn't really know why. And you just thought they were like manual exercises for your fingers.
yeah,
That's how I
yeah.
originally thought of scales, was just learning to move my fingers. But when I realized like, oh wow, like this solo is using the notes. So as long as I play the notes in the scale, holy cow, then it just the creativity was able to come after that.
Exactly. It just it puts things into context, and then putting your own flavor into it just becomes so much more easier. And when I understood that, like when I really started expressing myself in terms of sound, because now I don't have to guess where I have to go on the fretboard, I can just go there. And that really changed things for me. It's more of all of these ideas into my head. How do I connect them? Because I used to have this really, really common roadblock where like I have all of these ideas into my head, but how do I translate them through my instrument? And uh, removing that barrier was the key to it was theory, like learning the fretboard and knowing where you have to go or where you want to go also. And that just changed all of my ideas like for better.
Right. Yeah. Just a simple explanation of the song you like came out of this theory. It's this theory being applied and these little parts of it coming together.
Yeah. I used to just be scared of music theory so much that I just stayed away from it for so long. That was one of the reasons why. And now I like sort of curse myself, like why? Why didn't you try earlier? But
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like, whatever. It happened in the moment as a process. I think collaboration is very, very important. Like when I first started working with the saxophone player, he's a professional jazz musician. So they're all about, notating parts and reading music. So when he asked me for like all the guitar parts notated, that's when I was like, okay, now this is an important, inflection point where I really have to step up my game in terms of music theory. So, and when I did, I just found out that, the whole song is so diatonic that I can add all of these small elements of like, different borrowed scales. And now I think that song is my best work, but that's just my personal perspective. I think I would definitely, let people decide. But I'm really, really happy with the way that EP has turned out. So
That's cool. Let me ask you about your guitar itself. And the only time I've ever seen these guitar, I don't even know what they're called actually, but the way on my guitars, I've like a Telecaster, Strat, I've got like Fender, standard American type guitar, right? Um, the frets are all parallel, but
yep.
my brother-in-law also has a guitar like this, where the frets are sort of like fanned out, and they're no longer parallel to each other, and I guess it like kind of follows the shape of your hand a little bit. But does that have a name first of all, and do you mind kind of
It's just
explaining
called
that a little
fanned
bit?
frets.
It is fan
Yeah, so
frets.
they're fanned frets, and they're more for intonation purposes. I mean, it's just these guitars, like I have a 7 string guitar, which means like the scale range is obviously extended to another string and another 2 frets on the guitar. So just to make sure that the intonation is correct across the fretboard, as long as you're on standard tuning. I mean, we will have to probably set up the guitar in a totally different way if we were to play any drop tunings, and that's also very common in my genre to play in a different tuning. But we would limit ourselves to standard tuning because I play in standard tuning. And the purpose of the fan frets is mainly to just maintain intonation throughout the fretboard. So if you're either on the extreme ends of the fretboard, you would play the truest F sharp or the truest E.
Right. Yeah. My guitars are never perfectly intonated, which taught me a lot about music production in that so many of the synths I use especially the ones in the computer, are all perfectly intonated. You put a tuner after them and you play a C, it's like dead in the middle, no fluctuation. Whereas your guitar never really, it always kind of wobbles a little bit.
Definitely. And that's, I think I let it go. Like, for me, I'm still in like, a studio only home studio only musician. Like if it comes to a level where like I'm going to have to start paying attention to those things, I will work with, luthiers and stuff. But my main guitar is a Strandberg, a 7-string guitar. It has those fan frets and it's a headless guitar, and I don't try to experiment any technicalities on that. I send it out to the luthier to take care of it. But yeah, so it's definitely a very, very good instrument. I've definitely, noticed some changes in my playing ever since I started playing on that particular guitar. And I do have other guitars as well, which I sometimes use in terms of tracking. It always helps to have options, and there's different parts of a song that are sometimes played on different guitars. But my main guitar is like the 7-string Strandberg guitar.
Right. I've only played on that guitar with the fan frets maybe 2 or 3 times. And I did notice it kind of allowed my wrist to kind of fan out, I guess, really, instead of some of the positions were maybe a tiny bit more comfortable. But it wasn't difficult. I was expecting it to be difficult to play, like I got to change where I'm putting my fingers. But it does kind of fall into place pretty naturally. But it's something I never saw these until being exposed to like the prog genres. Like you don't see like, normal rock, whatever that means. You don't really see them out there too much. So it's interesting that it seems to be
I'm not
specific.
sure why. Yeah, I'm not sure why the prog rock genre has really, embraced this modern guitar. They're just called modern guitars, and I think the conception of this genre sort of really timed itself with the way these manufacturers were making these guitars. I know the guy who makes Strandberg guitars is this guy called Ola Strandberg, and he started making these guitars out of his basement. He's a computer engineer also. He was like he had a coding job, and he's this really incredible computer engineer who had a passion for building guitars. And now, and he made a few of these for a few of his friends, and one of them happened to be Pliny, who was one of the first guys to like start playing the Strandberg guitar. And I've really just like got this because he plays one. But then now I'm really like taking to it, and it's just made more ergonomically to the neck itself has like these 3 different planes instead of like a normal curved neck, which gives you like these different anchor points on different points in the fretboard, so that you're more comfortable playing those leads that are very, very textbook of this genre. So
Right. It's cool. It's nice how it's kind of got these new advances. There's a lot of really cool boutique stuff happening. As so much as like, I guess our world has become homogenized, where, every city and town and you can go to has a Walmart and a Home Depot and whatever. But it's kind of opened up this little world. Maybe it's the internet, I guess, where there are people making really customized instruments. And there is a store here on Long Island that it's this boutique guitar shop, and this, I mean, I never saw anything like it. Going in there, like you see some of the fan frets, but just all kinds of strange experiments on guitars. They're very expensive because they're so customized, but it's wild to see what people are doing, trying out new ideas and trying to advance the instrument really. I mean, I
For
bought a
sure.
Telecaster a couple of years ago, and it's like the basically original electric guitar, and I love it. But it is
Yeah,
kind of funny to think about a 70-year-old or so design still staying that way. So it's
yeah,
nice that there are people also thinking forward and, where can we take this next and what can we
absolutely.
try that's new?
I think niches are very. I think prog rock is still a niche. Like this is
Yeah.
not. Of course, we're not talking about mainstream music. Like it's only last year that an instrumental song from Dream Theater won a Grammy. So we are. It's
Hmm.
the first time that they ever did. So uh, instrumental music making it into mainstream is still going to probably take a while. But prog rock is still this really, really, tight niche, and it's the same people that you meet at the show who are also on the Facebook group and Discord channels and Instagram groups and Instagram. They're on your Instagram following, and uh, it's really this tightly, knit community that sort of serves the same artists, and they're also open to like, people who are trying to be like these new artists and getting their own element to it. And I like being a part of like this limited audience. I feel like, it gives me an opportunity to really showcase my music to people who do really care about this kind of music, and they
Hmm.
will if it's good enough, they will give it the attention that is needed. And if I don't, then I know exactly what I have to do. So that's how I
Right.
take feedback also. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. It's nice that it has that community. Smart
yeah,
people music. Hence
it
the
is definitely
engineers.
smart. Like yeah, it's a lot of engineers. I mean, Pliny also has a master's in architecture, and he was working in an
Nice.
architecture firm till he, started playing live, and then he just, never went back. But uh, it's definitely something related to academia that comes into like Prague Rock, and
Yeah.
is very, very popular in academia.
Well, there's like a puzzle aspect to it, the way I see it
Hmm.
anyway, where, like I said, with the time signatures, you're trying to figure it out, and then the challenge of counting it that way. I think it's really cool that so many artists, especially like Dream Theater, the one I know the best, really, um,
Yeah,
their music doesn't feel weird though. You don't have to know. You don't have to like be able to count like 13 beats in this particular section to enjoy it. It just the
yeah,
way that it's executed is very smooth. And I guess that's kind of
yeah.
the challenge of writing in that way. Like how can we make this unusual thing feel natural? And
I
we
agree.
were even just the other night just fooling around on a Beatles song, "Don't Let Me Down,"
Hmm.
and the part when it's like the verse, it dun 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 dun, dun don't let me down, and when he sings the verse, it's silent. The band pauses and rests, and it's like a 5/4 bar. It's like 10 beats. It's a count of 10 when he sings that line, and then it goes right back into your standard like 4/8 count type of thing. But you don't feel it because the way the melody is written, it arcs. It goes up and then comes back down. It just takes 10 instead of 8. And unless you were counting it, you just wouldn't even know it. So that's where it gets interesting for me is when people are able to
Yeah,
do things
it's
that are
very well
so
put. That's
unorthodox and you don't even notice it. It just feels normal.
that's very, very well put. I would say that's exactly like the balance in prog rock is to find the exact like balance between technicality and being easily consumable. Um, there's some people on either ends of the extreme. It's just it's so technical that it doesn't become music anymore. But if you take jazz for example, it's just I I don't have a lot of understanding in terms of jazz right now, but it is just so good to listen to. And the modern versions of jazz, like artists like Yusuf Days and Alphamist, that are Tom Mish, all of these British artists that are taking, these all these people went to jazz schools and now they have, their own style of jazz that they play. So uh, it's very, very technical, yet so nice and calming to listen to. It's very easy to consume, and you don't know why you like it. It is very technical, but that's what I also strive to do. Like my ultimate goal is to make this very consumable, and yet they have those small technical elements to it that give you the sense that okay, this is coming from like a really technical inspired genre, but
Mm.
overall it is very easy to consume.
Yeah, I've definitely heard some music that it's just like I don't have the CPU power to listen to this. you
Yeah,
know,
and that's
it's hard to listen to. You know, but when it works out smoothly like that, so it's made me think of like when you were maybe like a kid and you watched like a Disney movie or something, and you didn't catch all the things that were in there for the adults, but you still
yeah,
perfectly enjoyed it. You loved it. But then as you see these, sometimes it's not just Disney, but films you've seen and you hear them again, you're like, oh, wow. Like there's a little more going on in there than I realized.
yeah,
That's a pretty cool spot to operate.
absolutely. I think um, for engineers who like have that extra bit of curiosity, I also want my music to like, get that feeling. Okay, oh yeah, there's if you really actively listen and deconstruct all those layers, there's some aspects of technicalities to it. But uh, if you take like the song Foxglove's Amethyst from my EP, it's entirely in 4x4. So it's also just, yeah, I love keeping things simple, but the articulations just come, by so many other means. It doesn't always have to be like the drums that
Mm.
are playing a different type of beat. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So when do you expect the EP to come out?
So the EP is currently being mixed and mastered. I anticipate that to take around 2 or 3 weeks, and then I do plan on setting aside a one whole month for promotion. So I would say I'm expecting a release date around August or September.
Okay. That's exciting.
Yeah,
So your
very, very
work, I
much
guess,
so.
is mostly done. It's getting mixed and mastered, and then
Yes. Mhm.
that's very fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. It means a lot. And I would love to hear your feedback on it too. I
Yeah,
really admire your work. I'm a big, big fan of, all the guests that come onto your podcast and also in turn you. So very, very happy to be here and very much looking forward to what you have to say uh, on this conversation and also on the work that I'm putting out. So
very good. I appreciate that too. And I look forward to it. Let's see if we want to direct people to find your work. Do you have a place you like to send people, the main spot, or is it your Bandcamp, your Instagram? Where do you like to tell people to go?
you can definitely follow my Instagram. That is my most updated, social media profile currently. You'll find links to my music via my Instagram. And then if you want to take a deep dive into my work, please, you can visit my YouTube channel. That's where it has a bit more deep dive stuff into my process of songwriting and other media that I consume. Sometimes the books that I write, I review those books online and what I took from them. So yeah, those two would be the best ways to interact with me. And uh, yeah, my DMs are always open if you have any questions. So
That sounds good. So the Instagram is at Ameya dot I'm sorry, at Ameya XOXO. So that's AMEYA XOXO. And
that
then
is
I
correct.
think the YouTube is the same.
That's the same across all social
And
media.
then for Bandcamp, it's Ameya XOXO dot Bandcamp. And I'm going to put it
Yes.
all in the show notes too. So but if anyone's only listening, and
Yeah.
there you go, there's the spelling. Well, thanks very much. It's great
Thank you,
talking to you.
Brian. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you as well. And yeah, I'm very excited to release my EP and hear what you have to say about it.
I'm excited to hear it. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to the Music Production Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ameya. And if you want to check out more of my work, you can head down to brianfunk.com. Maybe check out the Music Production Club, where you get my latest work, sound packs, tutorials, educational materials, and join our special little community of like-minded music producers. That's brianfunk.com/MPC. And if you like the show, please consider giving it a review wherever you get your podcasts so we can get the word out to more people. And I will leave you with some words of wisdom from Michael Jordan. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Take care and have a great day.